Do you ever hear the saying, living off a reputation? You know, you're living off the reputation of being a hard man. You're living off the reputation of being, good at football. You always, I always laugh because you always hear someone who's like, in their 40s or 50s and be like, yeah, I had a trial at Liverpool, and I was 15, really, well, you're not 15 now. What position were you playing? Midfield. Getting the goals now. That's all you can really do. That, people who try to live off that. And I think now we're in a situation where maybe not Deontay Wilder himself, but everyone else who's kind of around him, and even Turki Al-Sheikh. Deontay Wilder, when I started watching boxing religiously, it was around about 2020. Kind of late 2020, really 2013. I remember when David Price lost to Tony Thompson, and that was one of the few times I think I remember actually specifically, I think that was, well, it was obviously on Saturday, it was on Box Nation, but actually staying home just to watch the boxing, because I really wanted to. That was when I was really getting into things, and Price was undefeated, Tyson Fury was unbeaten at the time, and you were just kind of like, oh, this is looking good, and it got me into boxing. And obviously I found out about the heavyweights, Deontay Wilder, being a talk about heavyweight, but not, I wouldn't say it was massively talked about back then. I mean, the power definitely was talked about, but he wasn't really seen as, the next big thing or anything like that. Certainly not to that extent anyway. Now, Wilder would go on to become one of my favourite fighters to watch live, because if you watched him live, his fights were never going to be Gary Ward or anything like that, but he was the sort of fighter where even in a boring fight, you just couldn't look away. So if you take Gerald Washington, that fight was pretty much a stinker for 5 rounds until Deontay Wilder dropped him and then took him out. It was a stinker. It was, if you go back and watch that fight now, you'd sit through 5 rounds of just, what the hell is this? You would, without knowing the result, and then you'd be like, oh my God. And that was the thing about Wilder. Even in a boring fight, you would sit on the edge of your seat. You would be just like, I want to see what happens, because at any given moment, it's over. Or someone's in serious trouble. And that was the thing that I liked about Wilder. That made him so entertaining. That made his fight so fun to watch, because you're watching it and you're like, something's going to happen. I don't know when, but something's going to happen, and I don't want to miss that. And that's what I liked about Deontay Wilder. I loved watching him for that reason. He was limited. I mean, anyone could have seen that. You didn't need to be a boxing expert to see that this guy, his footwork was kind of basic, to say the least. I mean, that's even being a bit generous. His technique was poor. Is certainly when it came to hooks and things like that. His uppercut was, when he did throw the uppercut, it was a very, very poorly delivered uppercut. A lot of times when he did hurt people with it, it was because they were already stunned by the right hand. He had very, very poor short punches, really was. Jab was okay. Straight right hand was brilliant, and obviously he had mastered that very much so. So to watch Wilder, you were never watching him for technical ability. You were never watching him because he was going to have a Gary Ward, Lewis Klitschko type fight, if you want to use a heavyweight fight as a context. It was never going to be that, but you just knew at any given moment it could all end. And going into the Fury fights, I thought Fury would win the second fight. I definitely thought he'd win the third fight. And I didn't really know what to expect from Deontay Wilder moving forward. After the Fury Trilogy fight, he went in there against Robert Helenius, knocked him out in the first round. And I remember the commentators who were doing, I think it was on Fox, said, oh, Wilder is back. And so it seemed. So it very well seemed, because knocked Robert Helenius damn near out cold. In typical Deontay Wilder fashion, the punch looked somewhat innocuous, but with a great deal of force behind it. So you looked at that and thought, okay, Deontay Wilder is back. And it seemed to me that was the right opponent to come back to, because someone he knew, familiarity breeds contempt, but he knew exactly what he was dealing with. He was able to take Robert Helenius out, do what he needed to do, and look spectacular doing it. So whatever demons were there from the Fury fight, you would think that was a good way of getting rid of them. But what did he do? He didn't do anything. That was October 2022, and he didn't fight again until December of the next year, 2023. And that's just not good enough. And then the full extent of the damage was really brought home over what happened in those Fury fights. When he was in there against Joseph Parker, and I picked Deontay Wilder to win that fight, but I remember, if you go back and look at the videos at the time, I was saying, look, Wilder should really win this fight, but him and Joshua are both on the same card, and if they both win, they meet in March. Now, Out of the two fighters on that card, the one who I think is most likely to lose, if they do lose, is Deontay Wilder. And that was what happened. I didn't pick him to lose. I thought he'd win because I thought that he had more to him and still had more left in the tank just based upon a minute of fighting. I know that's maybe a poor way to put a prediction on, but that's what I did. It became clear that he was very gun shy, extremely gun shy. And he was worried about what was coming back from Parker, who wasn't even that aggressive. The Wilder of old, who in that situation you would think he's laying up for a right hand. He's going to cock that any moment. It never happened. And you looked at that and you thought, geez, how do you come back from that? Now, Wilder gave a couple of interviews and, assured people that, oh, my fire, my hunger is back. But you would say that. Of course you would. You just lost your last fight. You would say that. You're not going to turn around and say, oh, we're working on getting it back. We still need to figure things out. Yeah, you're not going to say that. Of course not. And you're trying to sell yourself at the same time as well. You got to think about that. You don't want a promoter or, Turkey Al Sheikh looking and thinking, is he... He's working on things. Well, time is money, and I don't have the time for you to work on things. Get in the ring. And if you can't get in the ring and you can't give me an entertaining fight, I don't want to know. Simple as. So he gets picked to be part of the Matchroom Queensbury show. He's actually team captain for Matchroom, which was, imagine that if you'd said that 5 years ago. Imagine. But he gets made captain, and he's in there against Zhilei Zhang. Now, Zhilei Zhang is a lot slower than Joseph Parker, but he hits a lot harder and he can be a lot more aggressive. And I thought to myself, okay, that's going to be an ordeal for Deontay Wilder. It's not like you're coming back with a comeback fight after a loss. On point, mind you. You're going in there straight in the deep end with one of the biggest punchers in the heavyweight division. And the biggest puncher that you will have fought, no doubt in my mind, amateur or pro. Let's see what you can do. This is really the time for you to show us that you have something. He's coming in off the back of a loss. So, he's not coming in off a great run of form. In reality, he's lost to the man who beat you. Although he did better than you did, nevertheless, let's see what you can do. He's going to be easier to hit. He's a big, huge target, so he's not the fastest. So, is the old Wilder there? No, he wasn't. And again, he was gun shy. Only this time he was in there with someone who could really punch and had the killer instinct that Deontay Wilder once had. When Zhilei Zhang smelled blood, he sprinted across that ring to deliver that right hook to Deontay Wilder, and he nearly took him out cold. Now, at that point, I thought Wilder needs to just call it a day. As I sometimes say on here, stick a fork in him. He's done. His trainer, Malik Scott, who was not always his head trainer, it was originally Mark Breland, who I think did a good job and had Wilder's best interest at heart, which is something that you want from a trainer. Malik Scott, a former opponent of Deontay Wilder, mind you, got knocked out in the round, although that was a very sus fight in Puerto Rico. He insists that Wilder will be back. Okay. We've heard nothing from Deontay Wilder since then. We do know that he probably will come back, but against who and to what end is this whole comeback for? Deontay Wilder now is in his 39th year and is now into months, not years, until he's 40. Now, I know there are fighters like Zhilei Zhang who are having their probably best years in their 40s. Zhilei Zhang has never been knocked out badly on multiple occasions like Deontay Wilder has. Zhilei Zhang has never had tough fights like the Fury fight, like the Ortiz fight, even though he won the first fight. Well, he won both fights, but the first fight in particular, he had tough moments in that fight. He's never had that. Zhilei Zhang has had a strange career, quite frankly, that, again, 40 years old and really having his best years now. Zhilei Zhang's never had that, and Zhilei Zhang is a lot technically better, etc., etc., etc. It's not the same. Deontay Wilder right now, this comeback, the extent of this comeback, I just don't get. The only fight out there that I actually see as a potential fight for Deontay Wilder is a fight that would bring back memories of Kell Brook versus Amir Khan that we should have had when they were in the prime as both champions, but we won't have. But we can get it now. And I think that's Anthony Joshua. I'm going to do a separate video on Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua. But I think at this minute in time, in not just Deontay Wilder's career, but in Anthony Joshua's respective career as well, that fight is the only fight that makes sense. Now, Anthony Joshua said before Daniel Dubois that he wanted to become a three-time champion, he wanted to become a three-time heavyweight champion. Now, Daniel Dubois fought Filip Hrgovic on that 5v5 show, as did Deontay Wilder when he fought Zhilei Zhang on the show. Both actually, Dubois Hrgovic went on before Wilder Zhang. Now, throughout the course of the build-up to that, you heard Turkey talk about, well, maybe we can do Wilder versus Joshua Wembley Stadium. Wilder, Joshua, which was always the plan. It was always the plan. Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. That was the plan for March the 8th. It didn't happen. It ended up becoming in Ngannou. It then became the plan for September. Had Deontay Wilder had beaten Zhilei Zhang, and even if Daniel Dubois had beaten Filip Hrgovic, which he obviously did, but imagine Wilder had found that inner strength, had cocked a couple of right hands and took Zhilei Zhang out. There's no doubt in my mind that they probably would have done Wilder versus Joshua, a non-title fight, in Wembley Stadium as opposed to Dubois versus Joshua. Commercially, it did very well, Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua, but I think that they would have been able, I think Wilder, because of that history, people know who Deontay Wilder is from the Joshua fights that never happened, but there was a lot of talk of Deontay Wilder back then, and obviously the Fury fights, that would have brought a lot more at the casual audience, and I think they would have prioritised that over even a world title shot. He probably would have fought Dubois maybe February, had he had fought Deontay Wilder and beaten him, if things had been a little bit different. But you get what I'm saying. I think now that fight is still there for both guys. And I think if both guys are on their way out, which I personally do think they are, there's no doubt in my mind that both guys have seen better days. I think now or never, why not do it now? Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. I'll do a separate video, or will I? Because I kind of already talked about it in this video, but I think now is the time to do that fight. Ideally, the time to do it was 2018. 2018, 2019, they were the times to do it. He could have had that fight in 2018. In fact, Deontay Wilder could have had a $100 million deal for that fight with a rematch. And he turned it down somehow, inexplicably. And it just still baffles me to this day that he turned that fight down. It's just, I just don't know. And we could have actually had Undisputed. But we had to wait an extra, how many years? 6 years? Amazing. I think now that fight, both guys past their prime, both guys seen better days, both guys coming off devastating knockout defeats in the 5th round at that. I think now with both guys, one of them can sail off into the sunset, the other guy can think about what they do next. I still think that probably best would be both guys bow out, Kell Brook and Amir Khan style. But I'd say if one of them wins and they win in good fashion, they'll probably look to keep it going. But I think at this minute in time, now is the best time to do it. And it might be one of those fights that, even though I think Deontay Wilder has lost that killer instinct, to be in there with someone like Anthony Joshua, a man who you had so much to say about. You got to bear in mind, he had not much to say about Joseph Parker or Zhilei Zhang. Joshua and Wilder go back years. Maybe that's the fight he needs himself to actually find the old Wilder. The Wilder who was scathing of Joshua, who hated Eddie Hearn. The Wilder who was fighting angry all the time. And what I mean by that is, he was always trying to take these guys' heads off. He was speaking like that in the hushed tone. Maybe that's what he needs. But let me know in the comment section. Would you be interested in watching it? Do you care? Do you think that, like Joshua, Wilder is a member of the Stick a Fork in Him Club, as I call it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. And until next time, peace.